Catastrophe corner.
The Topeka City Council meeting will come to order. Please rise as you are able for the invocation to be introduced by Councilwoman Schwartz and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Your Honor. I think some of the people that work harder than elected officials, I know they do, are clergy in this community. And tonight I've asked Rabbi Debbie Steele to come forward. And as we all know, our churches and our synagogues are losing in population, and the clergy have to step up and do a lot more. And Rabbi Steele is one of those wonderful people. Thank you, Rabbi.
Well, I thank you for that wonderful introduction, and I wanted to thank everyone here for all that you all do for our city. I'm so appreciative. So I'd like to offer this prayer. Dear source of all, in this room today, we come together from diverse backgrounds and views and careers, but we come together out of a concern for our city. As this meeting is about to start, we take a moment to prepare. We think first about the gift of our lives. As we take a few breaths, we can feel our hearts beating. And we think about the blessing of being alive. And we thank you for that gift. May we bring that sense of gratitude with us to this meeting. And we think about the joy of community. We humans are social animals, and this mostly seems to be a good thing. Our city is a place, ideally, and most of the time, where we can learn from each other and benefit from the support and gifts of each other. So we give thanks for Topeka, our community. We bring together tonight our sense of being alive as individuals and alive as a city. We pray that each person here will bring their own talents and share them for the welfare of this group. And we pray that all gathered will be open-minded and open-hearted so that each person can learn from the others. May our combined intellect and skills help to nurture a city that is prosperous, thriving, caring, peaceful, safe, and enjoyable. Amen.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Rabbi. We have no proclamations nor presentations, so we will proceed with the roll call.
Mayor Wolgass.
Here.
Councilmembers Hiller. Here. Clear. Here. Ortiz. Here. Emerson.
Here.
De La Isla. Here. Jensen.
Present.
Schwartz. Here. And Harmon.
Did you say Cohen?
Cohen?
I'm here. Okay.
Yeah.
I thought you said Ann Harmon. I was
And
like,
Harmon.
I'm not here today. Thank you.
And it is more important to recognize the birthday. That today is the day of
Thank you, Mayor.
the Deputy Mayor's birthday. This is your special day. With your closest friend. There are no additions or deletions to the agenda, and there is no executive session. So they go to the item for appointments.
A is a board appointment recommending the reappointment of Paul Huffer to the Washburn University Board of Regents for a term ending July 1, 2021.
And your pleasure. Councilwoman Claire.
Move to approve.
Moves to approve. Councilwoman De La Isla seconds. No discussion. All those in favor vote yes. Opposed vote no. The mayor does not vote.
We have 8 yes.
8 having voted yes, the appointment is approved. And Mr. Hofer regrets he is out of town and cannot be here this evening. We then proceed to the consent agenda.
A is a resolution introduced by Councilmember Sylvia Ortiz granting Randy Wheat an exception to the provisions of City of Topeka Code Section 945-150 at seat concerning noise prohibitions B is a resolution introduced by Councilmember Michelle De La Isla granting Linda Monroe an exception to the provisions of City of Topeka Code Section 945-150 at seat concerning noise prohibitions. C is a resolution introduced by Councilmember Sandra Clare granting Our Lady of Guadalupe an exception to the provisions of City of Topeka Code Section 945-150 at seat concerning noise prohibitions. D is a resolution introduced by Councilmember Sandra Clare granting Fiesta Mexicana an exception to the provisions of City of Topeka Code Section 945-150 at seat concerning noise prohibitions. E is a resolution introduced by Councilmember Sandra Clare approving a special event known as the 8th Annual Fiesta Mexicana. F is a resolution introduced by Councilmember Sandra Clare granting a waiver to the provisions of City of Topeka Code Section 106120 relating to parking on unimproved surfaces. G is a resolution introduced by Councilmember Sylvia Ortiz granting Augustin Munoz an exception to the provisions of City of Topeka Code Section 945-150 at seat concerning noise prohibitions. H is a resolution introduced by Councilmember Karen Hiller granting the Celtic Fox an exception to the provisions of City of Topeka Code Section 945-150 concerning noise prohibitions and rescinding Resolution Number 8899. I is a resolution introduced by Councilmember Karen Hiller approving a special event known as the Tap That After Party to be held on June 24, 2017, and rescinding Resolution Number 8898. J is a resolution introduced by Councilmember Karen Hiller approving a special event known as the 2017 Top City Interns Downtown Concert. K are minutes of the regular meeting of May 16, 2017, and special meetings of May 23 and May 25, 2017. And there's a list of applications, and staff is recommending approval.
Okay, that is the consent agenda, and your pleasure. Councilwoman Clare
Move to approve.
Councilwoman Hiller seconds. There's no discussion. All those in favor vote yes. Opposed, vote no.
We have 10 yes.
And having voted yes, consent agenda is approved. We proceed to the action item, 6A, resolution.
It is a resolution introduced by Interim City Manager Doug Gerber in accordance with Section 1860010 of the Topeka Municipal Code, approving an amendment to a conditional use permit for a conference and retreat center at the youth camp on property zoned R1 Single Family Dwelling District and located along the north side of Southeast 10th Avenue, lying between Southeast Deer Creek Parkway and Southeast Payless Drive within the city of Topeka, Shawnee County, Kansas.
Mr. Interim City Manager.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. As noted, the attached resolution addresses a conditional use permit for a property. Since this is coming directly to the body from the Planning Commission, I'd like to ask Planning Director Bill Fiander to come forward and give you a brief overview.
Thank you. Good evening, Your Honor, council members. The proposed, actually, it's a conditional use permit amendment for the Forest Park Retreat and Conference Center at 10th and Southeast 10th and Deer Creek. They currently have a 35-acre parent tract, which is a retreat center, and they simply would just want to expand the boundaries of the area there. And so you can see at the bottom right hand side there's a 5 acres smaller square that they want to add to their current boundary. It is mostly a wooded area, and they would expect to use this for outdoor events such as prayer walks and haunted trails and other things of that nature 60 days out of the year. We did not have any issues with the property owners in the area. In fact, we got a letter of support from one of them. So we do recommend approval, and Planning Commission recommended approval as well.
Okay, are there questions, items? Councilwoman Ortiz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll make a motion to approve. This is in my district, and they do a good job of holding events, and our AmeriCorps kids are up there right now. They're always having some type of function up there, so I would approve it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councilwoman Clare seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor vote yes. Opposed, vote no.
Ms. Hiller, Ortiz, and Schwartz. to vote. We have 10 yes.
And having voted yes, the resolution is approved. I would like to introduce Jeanette Johnson, if you would stand, who is a board member of the Forest Park Conference and Retreat Center out there. Glad to have you here. Thank you. Proceed to item 6B, resolution.
B is a resolution introduced by Interim City Manager Doug Gerber designating the official city newspaper and rescinding resolution number 8238.
Mr. Interim City Manager.
Mr. Mayor, as noted, this item designates the Topeka Metro News as the City of Topeka's official newspaper. We are required by state statute to designate an official newspaper. So in one sense, this resolution is affirming what you've already done. Topeka Metro News has been the city's official newspaper for a number of years running. But the second part of the resolution, if you read it, says notwithstanding Section 1, which designates the Metro News, it also designates the Topeka Capital Journal as an official newspaper for publication of legal notices and ordinance if the city attorney determines that publication is necessary on a day other than Monday due to time constraints. So the Metro News publishes only on Monday, then you have to back into that Monday because they have publishing deadlines. You have to get them stuff ahead of time. And on occasion, we run into situations where we can't meet those timeframes. And so it is good for us, we think, to be able to have an alternate source of publication. So that's what this resolution does. Thank you.
Questions, discussion? Councilman Harmon.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd make a motion to adopt the resolution.
A motion to approve. Councilwoman DeLisla seconds. Any discussion? Councilwoman Ortiz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to see us just use one newspaper. I know I get this all the time from my constituents when we put that. We have published it in our paper. A lot of people don't read the Metro. I'm sorry. And they're like, well, I missed it or they didn't see it. And I'd like to see us go to the Capital Journal. Is this the time that we do that, or is it, when is the time that we look at that?
Manager.
Councilwoman, this of course does allow for publication in the Capital Journal on those specific occasions where the time frame doesn't work, so it's a bit of a hybrid. The reason in the past, as I understand it, the last time it was bid, we asked the Capital Journal and Metro News for 3 sample ads. At that time, the Metro News was $110 for those sample ads, and the Capital Journal was $1,200. So given the amount of publishing we do throughout the course of a year, we find it more cost-effective to publish in the Metro News.
Well, if I may respond, Mr. Mayor, I would like to see us maybe go back to the drawing table and see what we can find. Now what we're telling our constituents is, look over here, figure it out. It's going to be over here if we don't meet that deadline. So it's really going to be confusing. So I just want to, I'm not going to support this. I just want to see us go with one and stay with one. And I think when we go to the bidding table, we have a good bid and a good bidder that's going to go and make a good proposal, because time after time I do hear that, is that I never seen it in there, I didn't know it was in there, I don't read the Metro, and there's a lot of people that don't read the Metro, and so that's just my concern. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Emerson. I'm sorry, Councilman Jensen, and then Emerson.
Thank you. All of this stuff gets published on our website as well, doesn't it?
Yes.
Yes, I'm looking for the expert on that, Councilman, and the expert says yes.
So, and I realize not everybody has access to the internet. However, given it's our responsibility to be good stewards of our constituents' money, I think it indeed is better to use the cheapest bidder. And then maybe what we need to do is change our phraseology and say it's on our website and in the Metro News, and try to drive those folks to our free outlets first before we have to pay more money for something that people can essentially get if they already have that at the library or on a cell phone. There's very few people that don't have the internet at this day and age, and those that don't, there are options available to get it to them. Thank you.
Councilman Henderson.
question.
All right. Councilman Hiller.
Thank you, Mayor. A follow-up to that, are they currently all published in the same place? I mean, is there a place you can go on our website and see our legal notices in a grouping and a corresponding time as they're published on the paper?
Yes.
Is that how they're listed?
Yes, Councilwoman.
Okay, just to bring others that weren't here, this came up a couple years ago, and we tried to get the state law to simply drop the requirement to put it in the paper, because a lot of people don't get the Metro, but a whole lot of people don't get the Capital Journal either. And even when they did, scanning the legals every day to find something in the back was not something, that the average citizen did, and we thought that along the lines of Councilman Jensen's suggestion, that if we just became much more consistent with posting them on our website, that more people would perhaps see them there. The compromise was that we could, instead of having to publish a legal notice that was that long, that they changed the state law that said we could publish just a little squib that would say this is what it's about and put a link in there so people could read the rest of it on our website, so that we could save a lot of money that way as well, no matter which publisher we did. So we're already, I think, running, connecting people. I just didn't know if you could flip up a spot and see them all. So we're making some progress on saving money as well as that accessibility. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Cohen.
Mayor, so it's a state statute that requires us to print in that, and so why do we choose a newspaper that nobody reads to publish our legals? I mean, maybe with the addition of the link, maybe we can go back and revisit the Capital Journal instead?
Deputy Mayor and Mr. Mayor, yes. The answer to your first question is yes. It's a state statute that requires that. As Councilwoman Hiller noted a couple of years ago, that was changed to where you just published snippets and then published the rest on your websites. Again, the primary driver of our motivation is cost. We average $35,000 to $40,000 a year in publication cost, and so any variable in those per line costs can be significant.
Yeah. Other discussion? We have a motion and a second before us. All those in favor
May I
vote.
ask another question?
I'm sorry.
How
Certainly.
often does this come back up for review like this? Like if we take action today, are we setting the motion in to continue using a newspaper that nobody reads to publish our legal?
Deputy Mayor.
I read it.
Yes. Well, but it is the legal it is where,
I mean, that is the legal news.
yeah, Councilman Harmon, that is the legal news.
Yeah.
For if anyone wants the legal news, and those people who do read it. That's why they read it.
Deputy Mayor, very specifically, the answer to your question is in line 16, number 1 of the resolution, which says that it's designated this way until such time as a governing body designates a different official newspaper. So there's no routine to this. It just,
We did it once a year, because we used to switch back and forth every year.
the contract that we have with Metro, I believe it was last put out to bid in 2012,
I think it was 2010
2010.
is when it was bid. So we would have to bid it out again, and we can absolutely do that. And then when the bids come back, we'll have to take the lowest and best bid, most likely. So we can certainly do that.
Okay. Councilwoman Harmon.
Just to follow
Miller.
and clarify with that, because because it's declared the official city newspaper, it would come back to us. So we would know.
Yeah, the governing body has to make a resolution of declaration on this particular subject, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Councilman Jensen.
Thank you. That's also the county newspaper, too. Is that correct?
Councilman, it's my understanding that they recently switched to the Capital Journal in the very recent past.
Okay. Well, maybe it is time to rebid then.
Okay, we have a motion before us to approve the resolution. Any discussion? All those in favor vote yes, opposed vote no.
Looks like we have 9 yes, Ms. Ortiz voting no.
9 having voted yes, the resolution is approved. We go to the non-action items. 7A, discussion on economic development. The clerk would read.
A is discussion to provide an overview of economic development incentives.
Mr. Interim City Manager.
Mr. Mayor, thank you again. From time to time, and occurring more frequently, it seems like, this body gets presentations regarding specific economic development incentives that can be offered by this body. For example, next week, we'll have a proposal in front of you for some industrial revenue bonds for Brewster Place. In the very near future, we expect to have the requests for a TIF district and the CID district. And so we thought it would be helpful to lay the groundwork for what these are philosophically, what they do for the city, and what your role in the process is. This presentation, which will be given by our financial advisor, Jeff White, who many of you know and actually worked with, sat right here, I believe, for a period of time until Nikki and I arrived. So Jeff is well familiar and used to be a city employee, so he's well familiar with the city of Topeka and its processes. His presentation is not meant to be all-inclusive. This isn't meant to address the incentives that Go Topeka, for example, can offer. It's primarily focused on what you as a body can do, and maybe in anticipation of some upcoming agenda items. So with that, I'd like to ask Mr. White to come forward and give his presentation.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, good evening. Jeff White with Columbia Capital. Pleasure to be here tonight. I believe you have a presentation in your packet, hopefully, and maybe we'll even get it on the screen here. But as Doug mentioned, the plan tonight is to give you a really high-level overview of some common economic development tools in the state, and this is a bit of foreshadowing because you're going to be asked to spend some quality time with a couple of these with specific projects coming later on. So I'm going to go relatively quickly. You have a full agenda tonight, and I hate to keep you from budget. And so as we go along, if you do have questions, feel free to jump in and ask me to address them as we go along. So I'm going to chat about industrial revenue bonds, kind of 2 modes of that. We'll talk about community improvement districts, tax increment financing bonds, STAR bonds, and then I have not followed the goings-on down the street today, but I can give you kind of a sense of what we're hearing about potential legislative changes to these incentives that have everything to do with school finance. So we'll dive in on industrial revenue bonds, and the city is likely to see kind of 2 forms of these industrial revenue bonds. One has basically nothing to do with industrial revenues, and the other one also has nothing really to do with industrial revenue. So when we talk about IRBs, we are talking about kind of a generic tool that's really available in most states, where a governmental entity is issuing bonds on behalf of a third party, can be a private entity, can be a nonprofit entity, typically for the purpose of either providing them with access to the tax-exempt bond market or providing some form of tax incentive. So let's start with the simpler of the two, which I would call a conduit bond issuance. So most 501c3 nonprofits, if they are borrowing for capital purposes within their corporate mission, have the right to borrow tax-exempt bonds. So they have the right to do a tax-exempt borrowing. What they don't have the right to do is to access the tax-exempt bond market directly. So if you are a nonprofit, we'll pick a university, you're a private institute of higher education, you're going to build a new classroom building, you want to borrow on a tax-exempt basis, you have to find a governmental issuer, a city, a county, an industrial development authority, a statewide issuer like Kansas Development Finance Authority, that can access the tax-exempt bond market on your behalf. So the city's able to do that, and on occasion, nonprofits located in the city will come to you and will ask for this form of financing. Those kind of conduit transactions present no financial risk to the city. In fact, you're statutorily prohibited from taking any risk in those transactions. So your sole purpose in that transaction really is to facilitate a borrowing on behalf of this nonprofit entity without any risk to the city. So you'll see these from time to time. When they do come up, really the key question for the council as you think about that is, does the borrower fully understand what obligations they're taking on? And even though If there is a default on payment by that borrower, it doesn't impact the city's credit rating in any way. It still is your name on the front of those bond documents, and so you want to be sure that the borrowing is done responsibly. So the second mode of industrial revenue bonds in Kansas are typically issued to provide one of two or both tax incentives. And the one you're probably familiar with is IRBs that are issued to provide a property tax abatement. So typically this is going to be for a private company. Say a company wants to locate in Topeka, they're going to build a 500,000 square foot warehouse to distribute widgets, and as an inducement to come to the city, they would like a property tax abatement for a period of time. In Kansas, the city can offer a property tax abatement of up to 10 years and up to 100%, but you also have a great deal of statutory flexibility to negotiate any form of incentive within that range, from 0 to 10 years and from 0 to 100%, and that's in fact what most communities in Kansas do. Lots of communities have IRB abatement policies where the level of abatement is tied to jobs created or the amount of investment, and those kinds of things, all certainly possible and available to you. The other kind of incentive that's available through the IRB mechanism is a sales tax exemption on construction goods and materials. And so these are often coupled together. So a company comes in, I want to locate here, I want a property tax abatement. Oh, by the way, I would also like an exemption certificate, so when I buy materials to construct my building that come in Kansas, I don't have to pay sales taxes on that. Those two can be separated. So you can have an IRB for sales tax only, you can have an IRB for property tax only, you can have an IRB for both. You may have an occasion where a nonprofit, believe it or not, will come to you that is doing a project where they cannot qualify for a sales tax exemption under their own statutory authority and may ask you to provide them with an IRB sales tax exemption. So the question for the council typically in those cases is the benefit to the community we're getting from having this business located in our jurisdiction enough of an offset to give up property taxes, and you are doing so on behalf of every single taxing jurisdiction. It's not just the city, it's the schools, the county, library, Topeka Transit, all those folks. And so the real question for you there is the public getting some benefit of the bargain in this type of a situation? So that's the pretty quick tour of industrial revenue bonds. And I'm going to keep plowing on here. So again, if you've got questions, feel free to pop in. Sir.
Yeah. On the sales tax exemption, that pertains to the city's sales tax, not county. There's county sales tax and there is state sales tax.
It is a full sales tax exemption.
Okay.
From all levels of sales taxes. And the reason is that for the period that the abatement exists, the city effectively has nominal title to the property, and you as a political subdivision are also exempt from sales taxes. You're basically passing that exemption through to that private entity.
Okay. Councilman Emerson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Jeff, did I hear right that in cases where we're just acting as a conduit for IRBs, for 501c3s, we're not at monetary risk, but we are at credit risk if they're not repaid?
No credit risk, no monetary risk. What I indicated is that if the borrower defaulted, my hypothetical university didn't pay,
right.
They went into default. That default is not going to hurt the city's credit rating in any way, shape, or form. Okay. But you are going to have bonds outstanding that say City of Topeka on them that are in default. And so there's a little bit of a reputational risk there.
Okay.
I'll pick on another city in Kansas. The city of Olathe, for instance, has bonds issued through this manner that are in default. City of Olathe has a brilliant credit rating, AA+.
Sure.
Doesn't harm them at all, but I can tell you they do not like having the City of Olathe on the name of a bond issue that's in default. So.
Okay, thank you.
How common is for an IRB to default?
Not very common.
Okay, you don't hear of this.
Typically for a conduit issuance on behalf of a nonprofit or something like that, they have to be credit worthy enough to go out into the market, either to a bank or to the public, and get financing. So there are third parties that are doing credit review and due diligence on those transactions.
Okay.
On a standard IRB for a company that gets a property tax abatement, there are bonds issued. They're typically purchased by the company's bank. So you're basically taking a typical construction loan or commercial loan and you're wrapping it in a bond wrapper to get that abatement. So there's no risk there either.
Very good. Other question? Councilman Hiller?
Jeff, you probably know the answer to this just because you've been involved so much. It seems to me that when we are participants in an incentive package that JADO offers, that the county does the IRBs on them typically. Is that correct?
I think historically that has happened here in Topeka and Shawnee County, and under state law, either cities or counties can grant abatements within their jurisdictions.
Understood. I just don't think we handle very many that come through here. Now, if the county does it, I guess if I were the applicant, there'd be a bigger tax base to waive or...
If it's in the city, it doesn't matter. It's the same tax base.
If it's in the city, it's the same. But if the county does it, corresponding to your answer before, then we have to waive, or we end up with our tax revenue waived as well?
So anytime there's a tax abatement done, it impacts every taxing jurisdiction that applies to the location of that particular entity. So if they happen to be in unincorporated Shawnee County, then it's only going to affect the taxes that apply to them in unincorporated Shawnee County. But if there's an abatement of a project in the city of Topeka, it's the city's levy, the county's levy, all the school district levies, the state levy, library, airport, who else levies? Topeka Transit.
And just to affirm, we don't, if the county is offering them, or the vice versa, the other governing entity doesn't get to say whether they want to participate or not.
That's correct.
It happens.
That's correct. And that's a pretty significant sticking point, has been, particularly in Johnson County lately with school districts.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Other questions? Okay. Proceed.
All righty. So we'll blast on here to community development districts, which I will call CIDs. And a CID, the Kansas CID statute is actually based largely on the Missouri CID statute. It's been around longer in Missouri, much more common tool. The basic concept is this: a developer comes to the city and says, I want to redevelop this area. They define a geographic boundary. They get the approval of the property owners within that geographic boundary, which is often just the developer, because it simplifies their lives. And then they come to you and they petition you and they say, we would like to tax ourselves more than generally applicable taxes. The typical mode is a sales tax, but the statute also permits them to issue or to levy an additional property tax assessment as well. But the most common mode for CIDs is actually for retail typically, and it's typically a sales tax. So if the city sales tax rate all in is 10% today, they could actually go up to 12% within the district. And that increment can be anywhere from any increment of dimes or quarters up to 2%. That sales tax is collected through the normal state means, remitted to the city, and then the city basically gets those remittances and segregates it for the purpose of that particular development district. The proceeds of that CID sales tax can be used for a very wide variety of things. Everything from kind of typical public infrastructure, we're going to build out our streets or acquire property, to things like paying for childcare or public safety or tourism types of activities within that community improvement district. So it is a very flexible, very broadly used tool, and it creates new money that didn't exist before because there's a new tax there. So why would you do this? Well, most folks, even those of us that are familiar with municipal finance and might pay attention to these things, typically don't pay attention to how much sales tax we're paying, right? So folks that come in and out of community improvement districts might not know that they're paying 2% more for that restaurant meal than they would have had they gone across the street. So folks are more or less indifferent to it. It does provide additional opportunities for developers to offset the cost of development, which can be good. For the city, it can also be bad because it's also a way for that developer to produce kind of an outsized rate of return that might not be necessary to construct the project otherwise. So things that you should think about when a CID comes is, do they really need this much more incentive? Is it the right amount? How are folks going to know about it? Can folks make an informed purchasing decision to say, I'm going to have dinner at this restaurant, or I'm going to shop at this store, maybe I'm going to go across town and do it? There's also kind of a fairness issue, particularly with retail. If you incentivize a retail user here, is that putting a retail user someplace else in the community at a disadvantage? And so those are some things to think about. But developers like these districts, because of the flexibility in the way that they can use the money, and it can be used for more than just public infrastructure, which really is one of the limitations of the next tool we'll talk about, which is tax increment financing. So again, approval of the CID requires the consent of at least a majority. It depends on how many property owners there are and what the CID, how the CID is being constructed. But again, typically speaking, a developer will acquire the site, become the sole property owner, and then impose the CID because it's less challenging for them to overcome objections from other taxpayers in the district to do that.
How common are they in the state of Kansas?
There are a lot. The statute's been on the books 6-8 years, something like that. I think it took a while for them to take off, but if you are really sleep deprived some night, Mary, you can go to the State of Kansas Revenue website and pull down the sales tax list, which shows every sales tax sales tax entity in the state. And every time one of these CIDs is created, the state creates a new kind of taxing entity in its records. There's a lot of CIDs. I would guess probably 40 or 50, maybe more statewide. And very commonly used in Johnson County.
Yeah, that's what typically for retail development, right, isn't it?
It is most commonly used for retail because the developers like the sales tax generation. So if you're doing an office building, you're not going to have any sales tax generation. And what developers have told me is they don't like the imposition of the property tax because they end up having to increase their rental rate by that much. It makes their leases less competitive. So if the tenants have to pay the fee, they don't like it. But if the shoppers to the district have to pay the fee, then that's okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Councilman Hiller?
Thank you, Mayor. Could you share a little bit, I'm not even remembering the details, but when we did our first CID, which was where Joanne's and Academy Sports are now, it was kind of complex. There were some worries about fairness, and you all made it kind of complex, but I was very impressed that we were protecting charging it on the newer businesses and not the older ones. Could you tell those who weren't here just a little bit?
Yeah, we created a mechanism that basically created a base year sales tax level for the existing sales tax users in that district and tried only to capture the incremental sales taxes from new users that were not just new to the district, but new to Topeka. So there were a mix of users in that district, and this is the Academy Sports area and the pad site surrounding. There were folks like Academy that had never been in the community before, but there were also other users that had other locations in town or maybe were moving into this district. So we fought long and hard to try and get to a position that we thought was fair, and I had the developer tell us a number of times that it was the most hard-fought development agreement that they'd ever entered into. So that told me that we were on the right track from the city's perspective. So and I think that's worked out. I mean, that development has done well.
Yes, it has.
And the developer ended up telling me along the way on another project that they weren't sure how it was going to work, but it's worked out for them too.
We did have one prior to that. Holiday Square.
You're right.
Was
right.
That when they went through major redevelopment, and they used the CID, and same way I understand it's been done very well, and they've made great improvements to that area with the help of the CID.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Councilman Emerson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Jeff, one of the complaints I got early in my term was someone called and they were upset about they went out to one of the sporting goods store and they bought something and they had price shopped it and they said, after this 1%, I could have went across the street and got it cheaper. I've traveled, like in Oklahoma, I notice a lot of places disclose this. They'll have you go in a hotel, they have a little placard there on the desk saying there's a 1% fee or something. Do any places in Kansas do that? And frankly, I'd like to see us do that. I just don't feel it's right for people not to know.
I don't know if any place does. I'm trying to think if I've ever been in a CID where I've seen that, but certainly you could require that by contract as part of the negotiation with the developer, to say as part of the lease, you're going to require a sign be posted that says this jurisdiction or this establishment is part of a CID.
Thank you.
All right, questions? Okay, go ahead.
So the next tool is one that you've probably all heard of. It's the one I think that has maybe the most misconceptions about it, and that's tax increment finance. So we just talked about CID. You draw a geographic boundary, and you impose a brand new tax within that boundary, either a sales tax or a property tax. So TIF, in contrast, you draw a geographic boundary, and instead of imposing brand new taxes, what you do is you capture the incremental taxes on taxes that are already levied. So the 10% was my example on sales tax. We only levy the 10% in the TIF. But if that TIF district generated $100 of sales tax last year, and then we put the TIF in place and we build some retail and we generate $1,000 this year, we're going to take that $900 difference in sales tax collections and we're going to recycle it back into the project. And so that's the general concept with TIF, and we can do that with sales tax, property tax, and other locally levied taxes like franchise fees, transient guest tax, those kinds of things. So a very powerful tool. TIF in Kansas can only really be used for horizontal improvements. So land acquisition, site prep, underground utilities in the public rights of way. Public infrastructure cannot be used for private vertical construction in Kansas, which makes it different than Missouri in that respect. So TIF has a pretty significant amount of procedure to go through for its creation. So typically what happens is a developer would approach the city and say, hey, we want to do an economic development project. Here's the geographic boundary that we want to create. And we think we're going to do 3 projects over the next 30 years in this geographic area. So the first thing we do is we create a district boundary, tax increment finance district boundary. We define that area. We provide a general description as required by the statute. The council takes action to create that district. And that district establishes those base year values. So once we certify the district has been created to the county actually locks in and says, here was the base year assessed valuation in that district. With respect to locally levied and collected taxes, we kind of do that on our own. Once the council creates that district, by state law, any affected school district and any affected county have the right unilaterally to veto the creation of that district. So you provide notice to the school district and the county. The county and the school district at any point over the subsequent 30 days can pass a resolution saying, we don't like it, it's not good for us, so sorry. And if that happens, the city's obligated by state statute to come back and pass an ordinance to rescind the creation of the district. Once the district is created, then we've got the opportunity to have one or more projects, tax increment financing projects, occur within the boundaries of that district. Some TIF districts only have a single project. Other ones, if they're phased, will have multiple projects within that district. When a project is proposed, there is another set of notices, hearings, opportunity for public input, notice to affected property owners, and the project plan is much more detailed. Whereas with the district plan, we can say something like, it's this geographic boundary, it's these 4 city blocks, and we think it'll have office, retail, and maybe some, some public entertainment uses. With a project plan, we've got to come in, we've got to say, we're going to build a 90,000 square foot building that's going to be used for office. We're going to build 4 pad sites, 5,000 square feet each for restaurants. It has to be much more detailed. There's a financial analysis that goes into that project plan to determine that it meets certain statutory criteria. And then once that project plan is established and adopted by the city council, which requires a supermajority vote, then we can start taking those incremental revenues that are created and using it to pay project costs. Typically what happens is the developer takes out a bank loan, does the normal construction, they put in a street, that street is TIF eligible, they then submit their invoices for their contractor to build the street to the city. To the extent the city has TIF money in its account, it'll actually make the payment either to the developer or the contractor for that. So the idea behind TIF, for those of you who are visual learners like me, presented this pretty little picture here, is you take an area, and under state law, there are a number of ways to qualify TIF, but the most common one is to declare an area as blighted. So you're taking an area that's underutilized from a real estate perspective with weeds and junk, as you can see on the left, and you're using this economic development tool to incentivize a developer to come in and create higher value real estate uses going forward. Although Kansas law doesn't have this concept, I think it really makes sense from a policy standpoint. It matches what Missouri state law says, and that's this concept of but for. But for the presence of the TIF, the project wouldn't occur. And the typical way to measure that is, what would the developer's rate of return be without the incentive, and does that match a market return? And then you look at what would the developer's rate of return be with the incentive, and does that match the market return? And so you can think of areas in the community that you've driven by 100,000 times and you've been like, why doesn't that area ever develop? It might have environmental problems. It might have zoning that doesn't match. It might have clouded title. There might be 100 different reasons why that area hasn't developed. And the idea behind TIF is really to give that area that might not be developed otherwise a little bit of an economic push. The challenge, of course, is that many developers want more than a little bit of push. And so part of the challenge in creating a TIF district for the council is making sure that, again, it's getting a benefit of the bargain for the public in doing these TIF deals. And so there's a big challenge in there's kind of a disproportionate a level of information available to the developer who knows all the numbers versus the city who's only going to get the information the developer provides. And part of that challenge is going through a negotiation and an undertaking for due diligence to make sure that the project makes sense, there are public benefits involved, and that we really think the developer is getting enough of an incentive to cause them to do the project, but not so much that they're becoming unjustly enriched by the creation of that TIF. So one kind of takeaway for you on TIF is the mere creation of a TIF does not impose any new taxes on the folks within that TIF. We're merely taking the existing taxes that are already paid that didn't exist before the creation of that TIF. We're redirecting those into the repayment of TIF eligible costs for a period of time. So I think that's probably the most common misconception about TIF from business owners and homeowners is, hey, if I'm in a TIF, my property taxes are going to go up. Your property taxes may go up if there truly is good development across the street, just from kind of the natural growth and the value in that area, but it's not going to go up merely because the TIF was imposed. Good there? Mm-hmm. So the next one is star bonds, and star bonds are not a mythical creature that flies in from space. I think the easiest way to think about star bonds is it's TIF plus. And in a typical TIF transaction, you're able to capture the city-levied sales tax. You can't capture anybody else's unless they agree. So the city's done TIFs in the past where Washburn and the county agreed to contribute, but they didn't have to. They weren't obligated. The other party that's not obligated to chip in its sales tax is the state. And what star bonds do is it's like a TIF where the state agrees to contribute some or all of its sales tax. So if your sales tax rate is, 1 1/4 and the state's is 5 times that, you can imagine if you had a project that qualified for star, the kind of the turbo impact of having that state sales tax if you've got retail users in your district. So that's why star bonds are so powerful, and that's why you see folks clamoring to use it, is the amount of leverage of that existing sales tax stream is much, much higher. So star bonds have their own set of criteria for qualification. The most common one that's used is you've got to have something in your district that is of a regional tourism draw. So the quintessential Star Bond district in the state is at the Legends in Kansas City, Kansas. But for those of you that have been to South Overland Park in the last couple of years, you have Prairie Fire, which created a museum. You have the Blue Hawk development, which is even further south, that has, I think, its own museum as well. So you see these Star Bond deals constructed around these regional tourism draws. And then Topeka actually was successful in having that legislation written so that Heartland Park of Topeka would qualify. You see the multiple sport auto racing facility, or I don't remember what the exact language is. The racetrack in Kansas City, Kansas qualified as well, and there have been some other kind of additions that have popped up along the way. So my suggestion on Star Bonds is, to me, they often seem like a solution in search of a problem. And I would really encourage you to think about them the other way, that there may be projects that pop up that make sense as Star Bond projects, but you shouldn't go on a hunt to find one, if that makes sense. All right, so I will close really quickly on the last slide in the presentation. There have been a number of proposed legislative changes to all of these economic development tools during the session this year. This is all driven by conflict between school districts and cities and counties, particularly with respect to the financial challenges that have been imposed by this block grant formula and kind of the perverse budgetary consequences that have happened. And we've taken entities that used to be partners in economic development, and we've really kind of pitted them against each other. So again, I have not followed what may or may not have transpired at the Capitol today. I'm not sure I could keep up even if I were a heavy Twitter user, which I'm not. But we've seen a couple that will have a couple potential changes that would have significant impacts. So one change, going back to industrial revenue bonds, I mentioned when you do an IRB tax abatement, it impacts all of the taxing jurisdictions abatement. There has been legislative pending that would exclude the 20 mil statewide school levy and or would exclude the capital levy that school districts are permitted to impose, and many do impose. And the reason that capital levy got wrapped into that is part of the block grant formula allowed schools to use the capital levy for operating purposes, which they're all doing. So you have this very, very unique dynamic that's causing that to be in there. There's also legislation that would do the same sort of exclusion in TIF. TIF already excludes capture for the 20 mil statewide levy, and it excludes capture for the 1.5 mil state levy for higher education capital. That legislation would exclude all tax collections by schools, all their levies, which is about half of your tax bill. So that legislation, if it passed, would really cut the power of TIF to provide incentive roughly in half going forward. So that's a pretty significant statutory change. So I don't know where those are in the mix. I think having talked to the league director at a conference probably a month, maybe a month and a couple weeks ago, he really felt like cities and counties were going to lose on something this year related to economic development incentives. Didn't really know what that was going to be. It appeared the Star Bond statute was on the chopping block for a while. It looks like that one is going to survive and be reauthorized, but it'll be interesting to see what comes out of the Capitol here in the next week or so, hopefully a week or so. With respect to how it impacts these particular tools. And then we'll have to see how that impacts Kansas as it competes with other states that have much more powerful and deep incentives. So, Mr. Mayor, happy to try and respond to any more questions.
I just heard that the 20 mil abatement, there is not a great deal of support for.
I hope not.
Yes, for changing it. So that's good.
Yeah.
Questions? Overall, this is a lot of information, and this is good. This here is excellent as a resource to go back and get the information about these. Councilman Hiller?
Thank you, Mayor. Unless I wasn't paying attention, I think you inadvertently skipped a couple of pages of TIF, and I know we've got a TIF project coming up. The issue of pay-as-you-go versus bonds.
Yes.
Could you
Yes.
address those options?
Yes. So under state law, and star bonds are a bond TIF. So star bonds always go with bonds. But TIF, in a TIF situation, the council has the option when it creates the TIF to determine whether it's going to permit the future TIF revenue stream to be monetized in the form of bonds today. And there are two primary kinds of bonds that can be issued against that TIF revenue. The best case scenario for the city is something called special obligation TIF bonds. And a special obligation TIF bond is effectively like that conduit transaction we talked about, where the city's issuing the bonds on behalf of the project, but only the project revenues are pledged to the repayment of the bonds. As you can imagine, thinking through this, you have a blighted area. You're going to impose a TIF district. You're going to take 18 months or 2 years to construct a bunch of stuff. It's going to take another year for property tax revenues to show up. It's going to take 3 or 4 months for sales tax revenues to show up. The challenge of a special obligation TIF bond is, since the credit crisis, there is a limited market for what we call dirt bonds, right? Which is a bond that I sell to you based upon a pretty picture and a pitch book and a dirt lot that you're imagining those buildings being built on. So those kinds of bonds are a challenge to issue, and typically what we see is the market's going to demand construction be done and some level of kind of stabilization has occurred so that there's a predictable revenue stream, predictable enough revenue stream to repay those bonds. So what that causes is often kind of a push for the city to look at using its balance sheet to kind of overcome that market objection to the issuance of those TIF bonds. So the statute does provide a mechanism for what's called full faith and credit TIF bonds. Think of full faith and credit TIF bonds as a GO bond that just happens to be repaid by TIF revenues if they show up. So the city's fully at credit risk. You are a lender on the project. You are as much at risk as any bank would be at risk on the transaction. And that's a key decision to make at the beginning of a project. Ideally, your developer will come in and say, hey, this is a pay-as-you-go only TIF bond, because what that means is you're only reimbursing those eligible project costs if there are TIF revenues in your bank account. And if there aren't, then the reimbursement sits there waiting for those revenues to come in for as long as it takes as they do. So the pay-as-you-go TIF really aligns your interests with the developers. The developer wants to get repaid from TIF proceeds. You really want new stuff to go into this blighted site. You want the project to be successful. So pay-as-you-go, when the project's successful, everybody's happy. You've gotten the benefit of your bargain for the public, and the developer's getting reimbursed. In a bond transaction, it changes those relationships and those dynamics quite a bit.
Thank you.
Other questions, comments? Thank you
Yep,
very much.
appreciate your time.
Appreciate it. Excellent. Completes discussion item A. We go to discussion item B.
B is discussion for the purpose of providing an overview of the June 19, 2017 special meeting of the governing body.
And council members, this is on here as our official call of the notification of the special meeting. As you see there, we decided at our May 23rd meeting that we would meet again on Monday, June 19th. And the purpose is concerning the applications, to continue discussion on the executive session, concerning the applications for the city manager position. There'll be no action taken. The names of the applicants will not be disclosed again until some point after that meeting. Two important points. Number one, we agreed to meet at 5:30, and the meeting will be in the LEC building, because the Planning Commission meets here in televised session that night, and so it's easier for us to move rather than for them to relocate their televised meeting. So 5:30 next Monday night at the LEC. And next we go to item. Any discussion, questions? Seeing none, we go to item C.
C is discussion of the 2018 City of Topeka departmental budgets.
Mr. Interim City Manager.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. As you know, we kicked off our budget discussions with the governing body last Saturday. At that Saturday discussion, we talked about trying some new things with this budget process. Every year that I've been here, there have been questions about whether we're doing departmental presentations, we're not doing a special meeting. So we decided this year to try to incorporate it into a regular governing body meeting. So we're going to try that tonight. Each of the, there'll be 13 presentations from departments. The departments were given templates to fit their information into, and they plan to come before you alphabetically to make those presentations. They've been told that these presentations need to be brief, 5 minutes or so. Again, there's 13 of them. So even if everybody takes their allotment of time, that can stretch us a little bit, but they're also expecting questions. I may have just stole Nick Hawkins' thunder, but I'm going to ask him to come up and give another overview of the item.
Only a little bit. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Nick Hawkins, Budget and Performance Manager. As Mr. Gerber mentioned, tonight is a continuation of our discussion on the 2018 proposed budget, focusing on individual department budgets. Just a reminder that tomorrow night and next Wednesday are our final 2 scheduled budget workshops. They are both at 6 o'clock at the Law Enforcement Center. And we'll have any follow-up from Saturday and tonight at tomorrow's meeting. So if there is any, we'll discuss it tomorrow night. As Mr. Gerber mentioned, departments followed a standard template. You also have with you a summary report that the departments put together, which contains a lot of the information that's in this presentation, as well as in the budget book that is online that you have before you. So with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Doug for his presentation.
Good evening again. Executive happens to be first in the alphabetical list. I'll probably take just a little bit more time just so to sort of lay the groundwork for what slides you'll be seeing from each of the departments. So the first slide that you'll see from all the departments is a 3-year history of what the budget in the department has been, what the proposed 2018 budget will be, and then what the change is from 2017 to 2018. So for example, for the executive budget, you can see our history. Our proposed budget for 2018 is nearly 1.4 million, and that's a 1.6% increase over the 2017 adopted budget. I should back up even further and start at the very top. The executive department consists of the city manager's office, the city clerk's office, and the communications office. Then below, go back one, below the budget numbers is a 4-year history of FTEs, full-time employees, for each particular department that we're talking about. You can see that for the last couple of years, the executive department has remained consistent, and we expect to do that again in 2018 with 11 employees. So that would be 3 in the clerk's office, 4 in the manager's office, and then whatever that difference is, 4 in communications. And then there is a pie chart down there at the bottom that shows what percentage of that 1.39 million goes to what broad categories we have in the budget. You can see here 57% for wages, 19% for benefits. So 76% of the executive budget goes to salary and benefits, essentially. And then contractual and commodities make up the balance of the manager's budget. Moving on to the next slide. As you've noted in your budget book and as we discussed, we are publishing key performance measures in our budget book this year. This is our first stab at it. We're getting better, but there's much work left to be done in this area, I would say, particularly from, for example, the executive department. These measures you see laid out here, key performance measures, they're mostly about measuring things, and we need to translate from measuring specific events to measuring quality of those things. But this is kind of where we're at with it this year. Work in progress for sure. You can see public meetings, for example, our 2017 projected, we intend to have 1,200 public meetings. And then our target for 2018 would be 1,250. The one number that might stick out there for you is 2015 actuals. Full disclosure, that was a guesstimate. Things weren't measured quite as well in 2015, and so that was a guesstimate, which in hindsight was probably significantly off. Because I don't think we went from 281 meetings to 1,168 meetings in a year. So I think it was just noted incorrectly. Another key indicator on there, social media followers. That's obviously a big piece of what our communications folks do. This would include all of our social media accounts, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, Nextdoor. Nextdoor happens to have the largest number of users, as you well know. Being involved with that as council members, there's 12,000 folks on Nextdoor, so that's a significant number. Followed closely, but not closely, but followed by our Twitter account, which has about 7,000 users. We continue, I think, to find ways to engage folks with Twitter and anticipate that growing. C-Click Fix, you'll note that's a nice change from 2016 to 2017, and we project even bigger numbers in 2018. It's up significantly, and that really speaks to the appreciation that the public has for this new app that we've put out there for them to allow to be able to report their problems. And then the final slide that you will see from all departments is department highlights, a bit of a misnomer, but department highlights for the upcoming year. So what will our 2018 budget allow us to do? So from the executive side, we picked out these 5 things that that our budget will allow us to accomplish. We'll continue to implement the records fee schedule, continue to monitor the implementation of the new special events procedure. As this body knows, you spent significant time on that, and it's still a bit of a work in progress. There's still a few stumbling blocks, but as we move into 2018, the clerk's office will continue to modify that procedure and make it better. Continue to promote and improve the C-Click Fix application. Then from the communications side, the one I might ask you to pay particular attention to is that last one, and that's switching to a sole source to provide live streaming of our program content. I don't know how many complaints or concerns you get from our video production, but we experience a few, right?
Yes.
We get more than a few in our office, and so we'd like to move to a sole source, which would allow Cox, AT&T, any of the local providers to stream our meetings. Right now, it's the availability is fairly limited, and it's pretty choppy if you go to watch it online. So what we want to move to in the near future will make that a much improved process and allow for a broader distribution of our media. So those are the 3 highlights that you're going to see, the 3 slides that you're going to see from all of our departments, and that is a brief, hopefully 5-minute overview of the executive department. At this point, I will...
Took 8 minutes.
8 minutes, all right. At this point, I will stand for questions, and that will be the cue for the next person in line to, actually, I think it's Nikki. So if you notice folks getting up, their cue, when we ask for questions, that's their cue. And a reminder for these folks, that's their cue to get up and be ready to proceed to the microphone. No questions?
Yeah. Councilman Claire.
Do we want specific detailed question about the budget or the overall department, or are we waiting for that?
If you have specific budget questions, we're certainly glad to answer those.
Okay, I have a couple.
Okay.
I noticed, like, there's a $10,000 variance on the maintenance, and that went down in quite a few departments.
Councilwoman, which line item?
Oh, where am I? On
So-
page 36.
Okay. Councilwoman, that across departments is the fee that we charge departments for the inmate program. And in previous years, we've just sort of shotgunned that to departments. In this year's budget, we're trying to do that based on usage. And since the executive department doesn't have any usage, that piece of our budget went away.
Oh, okay. And then on the printing and advertising, I noticed, no, that wasn't my other question. It was maintenance. Maintenance. Something went to 0. I don't know what my note means. Okay, that's good. Thank you.
Okay.
Other questions?
Thank you.
Councilman Hiller?
One that I think will apply to all of them. In the pie chart, we all know that each department has to pay fees for building maintenance, legal, HR, and so on, from department to department. Where is that in the pie chart, and is the percentage about the same for each department?
Generally, that's usually in contractual services. So you mean like the IT fee, facility
Correct.
fee?
Fleet, all those
One clarification
cross-departmental.
I'd make on kind of what you just said is that we don't charge our general fund departments for the services of other general funds. So like finance doesn't pay for legal, we share the same fund. We charge other funds for general fund, legal, and finance services. That makes sense. So we don't, I just want to clarify, you just listed off like 5 things. We don't
I
actually
thought we were charging each department.
No. But for the places where we do charge for internal service funds, that's in contractual services.
Okay.
Other questions? Councilman Emerson?
And I promise my colleagues I will not ask a question on every item tonight. But I did have a question on these performance measures. We had talked a little bit at a meeting a couple months ago, one of our regular meetings, about are we benchmarking, are we doing something with these things just to tell us? Because, it's kind of hard to know what's just an abstraction, is this right? Is this about right or not for a department?
Councilman Emerson, the short answer is yes, we do that. Could give you a dissertation on the process. Okay. It's run through Financial and Administrative Services with our, not sure what her title is, management analyst, but she focuses on performance measures. It's Leah Bowling, who gave you a presentation a couple months ago on the issue. So yes is the short answer.
Thank you.
Other questions? Councilman Ortiz?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Where did the 1% come from, and the Center for Constituent Services? Is that a duplication for housing? I feel like that's kind of a duplication process.
So, Councilwoman, just so I'm clear, the 1% increase in the budget, is that your question? I think I could summarize it by saying primarily it came for personnel, whether it's salary increases or insurance. So salary and benefits made up the bulk of that 1%, I would say. And in terms of being a center for constituent services, obviously that formally runs through neighborhood relations, but certainly the city manager's office gets more than its fair share of calls, as well as the mayor's office and the city council office. So it's all, it's all part of the team, but it's certainly a big part of what we do every day. Certainly the phone calls Kelly Baker takes, and phone calls that make it to my desk are a big part of that.
Well, if I may, Mr. Mayor, and I kind of feel like that's a duplication of services. I don't know where anybody's at anymore, but I know Monique did that. And I think at some point, if we could all, if we're going to use that or whoever we're going to use and start filtering it to that one person, I think if we educate the public and start doing that, that would cut down on a lot of calls. But I also feel like it's, that's part of my job. That's what I was elected to do, and that's what people want to do. They want to call me. They want to call the mayor, who they've elected, the elected officials. And so We just need to know who we need to funnel that to and not have a million people doing one job. And I think it's very important that we follow all the way through with that. And I know see, click, fix, and all that. You know what? I see it. I don't even have internet at my house. I use internet, but I don't have it. And so everybody doesn't have it. And we have to remember with our constituents and our low to moderate income people that they don't have it. And what are we going to do? So if we're going to have constituent services and direct people there, we're going to direct them to the council office. I just kind of feel like we need to have one shop and figure out what it's going to be and do it, because I feel like now there's maybe duplication and even more than duplication of services. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any other questions on executive? Okay, administration, finance. I'm sorry, you're going to be introducing them.
Perfectly fine, Mr. Mayor.
Can I go? Okay.
Go.
Okay. Administrative and financial services, you've got it on your handout slide starting with number 6. And just a reminder what all this includes, the finance department includes our central accounting, so that would be your traditional, what you think of when you think of accountants. Also payroll, procurement, budget, performance, and the grant writer and grant services are in the finance department. Also, we oversee any audits that the city must do, comes out of our department budget. You can see on the overall schedule, and what I'll get into a little bit more with our department highlights, we aren't recommending any FTE changes from 2017 to 2018. And overall, we have a 5.3% increase to our budget. That is almost all due to the rise of the healthcare. In our department, we had a very large number for our enrollment in the 15%, so that's pretty much where that lies. As we told you in the beginning of the whole budget process, we, as every department, had to find ways with all of the costs that we could control to cut and bring in our budget under a certain amount. So I'll be highlighting what we found within our budget to make that accommodation. So moving on to the key performance measures. The 3 most important key performance measures in the finance department relate to our bond ratings and also our open transparency initiatives. So really our bond ratings from Standard & Poor's and Moody's, which we have separate ratings for revenue bonds and GO bonds, that's really the number 1 indicator for finance departments and really cities as a whole, because they reflect how's our overall economy, how's our financial management, how's even our management of just the city and finances in general. And as you can see, we've had improvements on the Standard & Poor's from 15 to 16. We've maintained that amount for the past 3 years. And then in Moody's, we've maintained a certain amount. We would expect for 18 that we would maintain that same amount. Of course, always the goal is to increase, and we'll be having our next bond rating call this summer, and we'll be able to tell you all the update in August when we go for our next bond ratings. Government transparency open portal views. This is a really important one where we're tracking how many actual hits we're getting to our websites, specifically our open data website. So this would include our budget portal, our expenditure portal, our performance portal. And this is a pretty exciting one. In 2015, we had 10,000. Of course, all the portals weren't up, and we didn't have it up all year. In 2016, we tripled that. In 2017, I think we'll actually end up higher than this, but we're at 46. We're projecting about 46,000. And in 2018, having all the portals on view for a full couple of years at that point, we would expect 64,000. And this is numbers that we share with our What Works Cities initiative and our Socrata vendor, and this is a very impressive number, speaking of benchmarks, compared to other cities of our size and of similar websites. That's one that's really exciting. And for department highlights, slide 8, just wanted to highlight a few things in the finance department that's different. A lot of times in finance, we do the same thing day in, day out. That's a good thing. You want some consistency out of your finance department, but we do have the opportunity to enhance some of our services. First of all, we will continue to facilitate some of the new economic development districts that you just learned about and you will be learning over the next couple of months. As you just saw in the presentation, each of those is a complicated animal, all very unique on their own. No one is the same. So these are really big initiatives for us to be overseeing. Also, we'd expect several new community improvement districts, and then the Topeka Tourism Business Improvement District. The T-bid will be managed by the Topeka Lodging Association, but we'll be the one collecting that money, auditing it, making sure that it's going where it needs to go. So that'll be a big undertaking for our department. Staffing levels remain the same as in 2017, and as always, we're always trying to do more with the same or more with less. So we do always look for ways even to be more efficient than what we've got. We'll continue to invest in our open portals. One of the reductions that we're proposing within our own department to bring down the 1% target that all departments had is that we believe that with some of our portals, we might be able to economize where we're spending our money, specifically with the contract that we have with our third party. We think that some of that we can either condense a couple of portals or maybe even do the pieces of it that are getting less hits, perhaps do those in-house and really focus on where we've had the most hits and pull that back in a couple of areas that it hasn't been maybe as successful. And then finally, as always, we will continue to provide our reporting on an accurate basis and in a timely basis, and continue to work on ways to make those more accessible. So we put out monthly and quarterly reports that we want more people in the public to read and understand. So that concludes my presentation.
Questions? Councilman Clare?
You're, okay, page 40, and it was under maintenance, again. Maintenance and equipment, office computers, it went down 31,000. Did you get rid of some machines, or did they?
That is actually where we pay for some of our support for our Lawson systems. And if you look at the prior year actuals, they're quite a bit less than what had been budgeted in 17. And we realized that essentially it seemed like maybe a carryover from a prior year that we kind of had that doubled up in that line item. So we found that we could reduce it, and we're not actually having to change anything. It was just we were showing it in several places throughout the budget, and so brought it back to what we're actually spending.
Okay, that's good. Other questions? Seeing none?
Mr. Mayor, thanks. Chief Duke is going to come up next to give an overview of the fire department.
Your Honor, fellow council persons. This is my first budget with the fire department here in Topeka, and it's been a learning experience all around. But before I start, I come here with heavy heart tonight because we had an active fire captain pass away just earlier this afternoon, Greg Bauer, and I just want to acknowledge his service to the city of Topeka. He was a captain, over 25 years of service. And basically, he was a young man. He was in his low 50s. So I just wanted to acknowledge that first.
Thank you for doing that. Thank you.
I'm here tonight to discuss the fire department's budget. Like I said, this is my first one, and as you can see from the pie chart, the expenses that we have with wages, commodities, and everything, obviously, budget and finance has gone through with the stuff that we don't have control of on the budget end. A lot of contractual stuff. On the manpower, personnel, there's an increase of 2, and that was for a program that I was trying to initiate with the city and the fire department, which was the cadet program. So if you want to ask questions about that now, I'm willing to take them. If you want me to continue on, I will continue on.
Well, I think maybe you go through your whole presentation, and then we'll see. Then we'll go to questions.
Okay. It didn't move. Okay. Thank you. Okay, so what we've been tracking for performance measures, obviously, is the total hours firefighters training. That's one thing I really push for, and I really want them to continue on, is to receive that training, the certifications and so forth that firefighters need to do on a daily basis. We're projecting from this year to continue on and increase it to over almost 47,000 next year. The SAFE program, that's for the department, is put together through the Fire Marshal's office, programs for children, schools, and everything, where we give them information on fire safety. The public education to the children, where they go out to the schools themselves and teach fire safety to the children within the community, starting off at the elementary, working their way up to the middle and high schools. Annual fire department responses, when you look at the fire aspect of it, we're looking at 4,500 calls, fire-related calls, compared to our fire EMS medical response, where it's 17, we're looking at 16,280. This keeps increasing, and there's one, it's a national trend that 80% of the fire departments run EMS calls, the majority of. And so they're multi-hazard response individuals responding from everything from fires, EMS, hazmat, special ops, you know, they're across the board response capabilities. The highlights for the department were the replacement of the self-contained breathing apparatus. Their life expectancy had come up, and we went out and bid an RFP for the self-contained breathing apparatus. And what is unique about these are the incident commander on the job can actually tell when firefighters' air on their SCBAs are getting low. It's computerized, so he can see everybody, so nobody's in any form of danger while they're in there fighting fire. So this is a unique and a very well appreciated to the firefighters that they receive this. This is the standards that we follow, NFPA, which is the National Fire Protection Association standards. We do that through equipment, training, apparatus, even on the EMS side as well. We follow standards just like the buildings and codes follow their standards. We follow these. The cadet program, as I talked about, is to try to bring onto the city's fire department workforce someone within the community that better represents the community that we serve, and that's just diversity. So that's what we're looking to do, to try to get two young people who feel they have want to have a career in the fire service, and we're going to home grow our own from Topeka. Then we get into the advanced life support. I know there was a lot of questions about that earlier on Saturday when I first presented it. This is something that is not a trend, it's a standard anymore with fire departments throughout the country, where you have, like I explained to everybody on Saturday, 100,000 population and more, it's fire-based EMS. You know, in the state of Kansas, there's 5 cities, over 100,000 population, and Topeka being one of them, the rest of them all have fire-based ALS service within their community. What they basically do, that we're hoping to do, is utilize the personnel and equipment we already have to give this service to the community. I could talk more about this now, or I continue on with the slide.
Manager.
Mr. Mayor, I might just interject here that we have another presentation that Chief Duke has prepared on ALS. He's not prepared to go through it right now. He can certainly take questions, but we're going to bring that back for you for additional consideration with some more detailed information than we presented last week.
Like, it could be either one of our budget meetings,
absolutely,
like tomorrow or next week.
Tomorrow or next Wednesday, yes.
Okay, all right. Are there questions on fire? Councilman Clare?
Yeah, I have quite a few. On page 42, there is 7 firefighter 3 under training. I just need clarification. Why is it, what's training firefighter 3 and 7 FTEs? What exactly?
The training department?
I don't know, that's my question. Because you just said you were going to do this with the personnel that we have.
Oh, sorry, on the ALS aspect?
I don't know. I don't know if that's this number.
What I was talking about there was that we were going to utilize, we do have paramedics already on the fire department. We are going to utilize personnel that we have. We're not going to hire new people just to bring the ALS to the city.
Well, these are new people here, so I guess I need, what are they for?
It's either reclassified positions maybe, or a new.
When someone moves from one firefighter, there's different levels within the fire department. They come in at firefighter level, work up to firefighter 1. So these individuals are moving from probationary up to the next level.
But it doesn't add a person, because we go from 20 to 29 people. So if they're just moving, it wouldn't add people.
I think Councilman De La Isla has a clear.
I think that if memory serves me right, I think it was when we had our other fire chief, we had talked about the need of getting professional individuals last budget to do training, and those are individuals that were going to be brought on. Does that ring a bell?
Goes from 20 in 2017 to 29 2018.
Well, one thing I might just clarify on this, kind of this layout here, is that on the right there, on page 43, it's got the grand total for the department. So even though in that division, it might look like they're going up by 7, actually overall, they're up by 2.
Which is the cadets.
Yes, the larger the department, the more you're going to see variance by division. It's very complicated. This is actually my least favorite part of the budget process, because at any given time, you've got vacancies, positions moving, and so the most important number on this schedule is the overall number, knowing that at any given time, those numbers are moving around within the department and within the division quite a bit. I might say that, if you don't mind, we may take this and follow up on it, only because I can't tell you right now why those 7s are exactly showing in that division, but I only want to confirm to you that overall it's growing by the 2 cadets.
Yeah, I'd like to know if they moved to training, where they came from.
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay.
We can probably have that by tomorrow.
Thank you. And then I noticed it went down to 0, from 21,000 to 0 on drug and lab supplies. Are we doing away with something?
No, we actually, if I'm correct, we started reclassified that and put it in EMS before it was in our general budget. So to try to separate, to see what we were actually spending on EMS.
So is it in here somewhere else?
Materials and supplies.
Materials and supplies?
Yes, materials and supplies.
Oh, good, because that's my next question. So materials and supplies then went up 136,000. So that would be the 21,000, and then is that your new equipment? Where's your new equipment? Is that where it is at?
Yes.
Okay, that was my other question too. Okay, thank you.
Councilman.
Mr. Mayor, sorry.
Yes, go ahead.
Mike Benson has stepped forward. He is the new business services manager with the fire department. He was more intimately involved in this budget process, so he's going to help answer questions.
And to answer your first question about the 7, those are going to be the, we don't call them cadets anymore, the trainees next year for the ones that retired this year. That's what the 7 are. We'll have 7 that will be retiring at the end of this year, and we will have 7 trainees
for
next year.
Okay. All right, thank you.
So they're in Baltimore or everywhere else.
Good.
Councilwoman Schwartz.
Thank you, Your Honor. Chief Duke, I'm sorry you had to be up second to, being so new and everything.
No, that's okay.
Please don't feel like you're in the frying pan.
No.
My question has to do with, we have seen 3 reports, the studies, and then we also have Chief Wayne's report from when he was here. Has the department been utilizing those reports and will be answering, because I went through those reports and also Wayne's report, or the studies and the Wayne's report, and there's obviously things that rose to the top as to priorities in all of those studies and Chief Wayne's report. So can you address how the department is making sure those studies don't sit on the shelf of shame?
Well, obviously, I've been in discussions, obviously, with Mr. Gerber on this here. I have read the reports dating back to 2006, I think it was. But with Interim Chief Wayne, there was a lot of good information in there, and I'm taking that and it's one step at a time to try to implement stuff that I agree with and him what needs to be done. One off of being a ALS, fire-based ALS. How we do it, it's not a cookie cutter type of service. It's something that's going to be built just for Topeka and how they want to run it. and obviously with the diversity aspect and the professionalism of the department with certifications, training, and also in the promotional system. Those are the things I've been working on mostly because I think the big decisions are going to be later when we look at the master plan for how our resource allocation is throughout the city.
Okay, and as a follow-up to that, I feel we should be, and many of us feel we should be moving towards accreditation, and that was recommended in the studies and also in Chief Wayne's report, so I applaud you for doing that. I have one follow-up question that I'd like to ask, and that is the SAFE program. And does the fire department staff know about the SAFE program? Because I've asked a few and talked to a few, and who is doing the training for the SAFE program in the schools? And
we have a public education officer.
Okay,
we have a position.
We have one person doing that? Okay.
One person. We have one FTE for that position.
Okay, thank you.
Interim City Manager, you had a comment?
I think, Mayor, thank you. I think Chief Duke addressed it, but just to give a very specific example, one of the things we read in Chief Wayne's report was regarding education in the fire department. He and I have worked on a new promotional process to move into the chief ranks that doesn't rely sort of on the old system, but is focused on education, training, skills. There'll be an independent board evaluating the candidates. There's a test that they have to take, a scenario-based test. So that's a good recent example of something very specifically that's being implemented.
Very good. Okay, other questions on fire? Okay, I'm sorry, yeah. Councilwoman Ortiz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We cut out training, I don't remember what year that was, for the fire department. I think it was a year or two after I got on. And we've cut different things for the department because their budget is so good, or so large. And they also one year saved us $100,000 in health insurance to help us with that cost when we were in trouble. But just like the streets, and we're so far behind, it's the same thing with the fire department, whether it's their education, their tools, the trucks, everything is just so far behind. So as we sit here and question, we need to really keep in mind that we are behind, and I did agree with Chief Wayne's report, because if you go into the the fire department's stations, it's behind, it's terrible. I commend the chief. The first thing he was going to do is, I don't know if he did it or not, was rip down those curtains that made it dark and dull in there. And I know we get a lot of flack of, well, those guys, it's no different than the secretary that has to have a good chair. Those guys, their hours are different, their arrangements are different. But at some point in time, the council needs to really look at all of that where fire and safety is concerned, because it's terrible. Their housing units is terrible. Their equipment, they could use more. They're training each other. We want all this stuff, but we're going to have to step forward with some funds. It's going to cost us. Everybody has talked about, well, they go on medical calls all the time. Yep, that's what they do. But we need to really, really look at that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Other comments? Thank you. Ready for next. Thank you, Chief.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. In Topeka's version of the alphabet, we'll go to neighborhood relations now. F is followed by N. I believe this is the way it is in the budget book. I think it's a carryover from when it used to be housing and yeah. But in any case, Ms. Sasha Hahn.
Mr. Mayor, governing body members, good evening. Okay, so to start us off, you'll see that we have a pretty big reduction in our budget from 17 to what is proposed in 18. This is attributable to development services being moved out of neighborhood relations and into the planning department. So the 16 FTEs that you see, we are down, and the 18% in terms of our overall expense is completely attributable to that transition to Planning Department of Development Services. Just to touch a little bit on the numbers on this page, of the 7.1, that is the total for our proposed 2018 budget, approximately 3.8 million of that is grant funding that we get from HUD. And then our general fund total is somewhere between 3.3 and 3.4 million. Of that, the total salary and benefits is approximately 2.25 million. So what that equals for the community and for you all is that approximately 70% of our funding, you'll see 69% is in contractual. The majority of our funding is going back out into the community in programs and services. That is attributable to the large amounts of HUD funding that we get and that we turn around back into the community. Okay. The key performance measures that we've picked, obviously we are still focused on property maintenance and code compliance. The first one you'll see our projected target for 2017 is 7,000 properties brought back into compliance. This isn't the total number of cases. These are the number of properties that we anticipate will be cited and then come back into compliance before they have to go on to a court process. Residents provided rental assistance. We are projecting 375 that will serve in 2017 and 400 for 2018. That is our Shelter Plus Care program, which is a HUD-funded program that provides rent assistance to folks with disabilities in the community. Neighborhood training opportunities, we are projecting 10 for 2017, and we expect to double that in 2018 to 20. Those are not only for our neighborhood improvement associations, but also for other neighborhood leaders in the community. And then finally, demolitions. You'll note a notable decrease from 40 is our projection for this year in 2017. We've brought that down to 30 for 2018, and our logic is based on the fact that we are moving through the neighborhoods and the residential properties, and now we are starting to shift our focus to more arterial and commercial areas of the community. In the overview that you guys received, you'll note that we mentioned the bowling alley on 6th Street. That's a very good example of a large commercial structure that's in pretty bad shape. It needs to be brought down. If the owner doesn't, then we will. And so that is the reason for the reduction in the total number of demolitions for 2018. Additionally, we did acquire ownership of Van Buren School in 2016. I'm working furiously on a redevelopment project for that property. I can't tell you about it, but hopefully that'll work out. If it doesn't, we will probably start the process for demolition of that structure in 2018. I'm trying everything I can to avoid that because I believe it'll become a big vacant lot in the neighborhood that I'll then be trying to redevelop as a vacant lot. So we're hopeful that we can get something off the ground for that school. Okay, she's ahead of me. Great, thank you.
Mayor.
So our highlights for next year, we are going to be working furiously in our community engagement division to bring NeighborWorks America leadership training to Topeka. We want to offer this not only to the NIAs, but also to our other neighborhood organizations that are working on community building. We touched briefly on how powerful this NeighborWorks America group is in the summary report. I won't reread that to you, but we are very excited about the opportunity to bring them to Topeka to offer training to the neighborhoods. We will also be working in community engagement to secure another AmeriCorps team as well as an AmeriCorps Vista. Both of those programs come with a slight cost. For the AmeriCorps team, we do provide housing for them, and there's a small cost for that. And then the Vista, we will have to budget for a small salary for that position. But if we secure the Vista, we should have them for 3 years. So it's a pretty outstanding deal, and we're very excited about that opportunity. Housing Services will, of course, be working to provide rehabilitation to 60 homes in our LMI neighborhoods. That's a combination of our SORT target areas as well as our emergency repair programs. Property maintenance will continue to focus on housing inspections. In 2016, we performed 1,600 housing inspections. We aim to double that in 2017, and we've conservatively set the target again at a double of the 1,600 number for 18, but we do believe that we may exceed it. But we're going to try to be conservative and maybe just outdo ourselves. And finally, we will continue to focus on unsafe structures in the community, and I've already talked to you about the need to begin to look at those more commercial and public-type buildings that will need to be addressed. With that, I would be happy to answer any questions
Are
you may
there
have.
questions? Councilman Harmon?
Thank you, Your Honor. Sasha, does this information include the CDBG funds?
It
that come
does.
through? Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, Your Honor.
Councilwoman Ortiz?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sasha, I know you don't want to talk about the leadership training, but I want to talk about it. Can you explain it to me? What are you going to train people to do? Cut down trees, bushes, or, I mean, when I hear of training, I don't understand.
Sure. So in the summary document that we provided to you, we give you, sorry, let me locate it. Under the highlights section, which would be on page 6, I believe, in your budget documents, we give you an outline or a description of NeighborWorks America leadership training. NeighborWorks America's training and certification offerings represent the very best in professional development for those serving people and communities in any capacity. No other organization matches their breadth, depth, and focus in this field, and no other organization is in a position to identify trends and build training around cutting-edge approaches as we do. That's a statement from the NeighborWorks America group. That's leadership training for our neighborhood leaders. So it's about community building and organizing your neighborhood groups and how to get more involvement from the community and provide that kind of grassroots stuff to our neighborhoods.
Well, I will say this, being an East Topeka South NIA president, if we brought back the enhancement program, that would help a lot. And I don't know if anybody knows what the enhancement program was. The enhancement program was an initiative that you could earn your volunteer points and earn stuff for your home. And that program was taken away because of the city staff that messed up, not necessarily the neighborhoods. And so what we had was a lot of people that was volunteers. So Mr. Mayor could put my front door on and he'd get paid for his volunteer work, and I could get credit for a brand new door, which I have new steel doors on my house, anything that upgraded your house. And we would have a lot of incentives, people that would come, and a lot of people that went to our NIA groups, and they were part of that. Now they feel like there's really nothing there. So it's been very hard to get volunteers to help them, to make them feel good about themselves. I personally will be working on that to try to bring that incentive back, because I was told that it can't be brought back, but it can. This body can vote on it and make it come back. Because what I seen, I went to the SORT program, and what I seen was now they're asking us to do some things, and I'll discuss that with the city manager, but they're asking us to get 25% of our residents for the empowerment grant. So we're to go door to door and ask them of that. I believe, and I will continue to believe, that our NIA presidents are the backbones of our neighborhoods that work very, very hard. And that's why I sit in this chair, to continue to push forward. And our HUD funds would not be available if it wasn't for the low to moderate income areas that they are. And I kind of feel that they're kind of drifting in a different area. But I'll keep a close eye on that to make sure that they go where they need to go. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councilman Jensen?
Thank you, Your Honor. I'm very excited about leadership training in our neighborhoods. Is that only available to NIAs, or is it available to any neighborhood organization, organized or otherwise?
No, sir. That, the dollars associated with the cost for that is included in our community engagement administration portion of our budget, which is general fund, so it would be open to all neighborhoods.
Excellent. That's wonderful news. Thank you.
Councilman Clare?
Sasha, on the demolitions, did you go from 40 to 30? Is that due to monetary costs? Because it's going to cost you more for the commercial?
Yes.
Okay.
The manager has generously included the same dollar amount for us, so $400,000 is still the estimated total for 2018 for demolitions. But we know that structures like the bowling alley will be much more costly than a residential structure to demolish.
Okay.
Councilman De La Isla?
I just wanted to commend the idea of developing leadership in our neighborhoods. The NeighborWorks, I was certified as a NeighborWorks homebuyer counselor, Spanish homebuyer counselor, and the network that you build, not just for the people that are there, but the ideas that you're able to bring nationwide, and the people that you get to know that are doing really cool things that are willing to help you, is just incredible. So this is spectacular news for our community.
Thank you. Other questions? Councilman Hiller?
Just a quick one. I, too, have wanted to see the leadership development, and I'm really glad that that's coming along. We all got an email today that the consolidated plan has just been released for review and comment. Could you just briefly tell us whether, in previous years, it's been about the same from year to year. Are there some changes in that you could bring to our attention?
For 2018, there are not dramatic changes. It will be very similar to what you've seen in past years. For 2019, we had a discussion last night with the Citizens Advisory Council about a shift of a portion of those empowerment grant funds over into our SORT rehabilitation dollars. We continue to lose funding from HUD. When I got here, I think we were close to $4.5 million, and 3 years, almost 4 in, we're down to 3.8. So we are the dollars available for that housing rehabilitation, which is the major focus of our department, is shrinking. We're looking at about $330,000 for the 2018 Consolidated Action Plan. We'd like to push that back up closer to the $500,000 that's always been available for SORT housing rehabilitation. So that will come to you in 19, but 18 will be very similar to what you've seen this year.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Councilman Clare?
I noticed on your education and travel, it was raised by $7,000, but you have less people. What does that include, or why did that raise by $7,000? It's on page 57.
NeighborWorks training.
There's a very good likelihood that is where we've couched some of those dollars for the NeighborWorks training, because that would be education for the neighborhoods. I can clarify that with our finance manager and follow up with Nikki and provide you the specifics to that.
All right, thank you.
Good. Okay. Other questions? Seeing none? Thank you.
Sean Maysberger is going to step forward representing the Human Resources Department, as Jackie was unavailable this evening.
Good evening. The Human Resources Department is comprised of 13 staff members with our functional areas in benefits, risk management, recruitment, training, and classification and compensation. You'll see that we have a slight increase, just above 6%, and that is due to program funding being transferred from Neighborhood Relations to the Human Resources Department. Our performance measures are the employees we're tracking, our employers' workers' compensation claims. And what you see for 2017 is the budgeted amount for those claims. 16 was the actual dollars we spent for workers' compensation. 18 is a targeted budget amount that we're asking for, and that's just based on history and our experience with that, as well as our health insurance claims. We are also tracking the utilization of the Health and Wellness Center, as well as our turnover rates in regards to public safety, the amount of hires we have and terminations, and that could be involuntary or voluntary terminations. We're also tracking employees' participation in training and those number of participants throughout the year, whether it's skill development or supervisory training. So some of our key highlights for performance measures is risk management. Staff assesses injuries, accidents. They're participating in public safety meetings with departments, educating and training our employees, because of course the goal is to provide a safe working environment for our employees. They also recognize employees and departments when there are 0 accidents or injuries. On our wellness initiatives, we are expanding that by trying to encourage utilization of the Health and Wellness Center, recommending city employees use the fitness center. We're providing training, workshops, lunch and learns that have to do with promoting overall wellness and improving our workforce through whether it's nutritional information meetings, diabetes, how about work stress management, weight management. Some of those are initiatives and programs that we're trying to incorporate to provide employees an opportunity to learn more about those, so we have a healthier workforce. On recruitment, we're expanding our outreach activities. We partner solely with public safety in that reference. We collaborate with both the police department and the fire department, whether it's through attending job fairs together, going to community events and activities, trying to get the word out there and promote the positions for public safety. And we commend the police department in starting their new cadet program and the fire department working to establish their cadet program. So we are looking forward to that, getting the word out and getting those potential candidates that are ready to come and take those public safety positions. We are continuing to develop curriculum and modulars for training our employees, whether you're just wanting to improve your skills in, say, Excel, whether you're a beginner, advanced, whether you're looking to promote to a supervisory role or you're beginning a supervisory role, or maybe you've been in that position a couple years. We offer 2 16-week supervisory training courses. So it's a wide spectrum that we're just trying to develop modules that employees, no matter where they're at in their career, have that opportunity to continue to improve their skills development and training for their departments. Also, the department is also always wanting to improve processes, and we're excited about one of the uses of technology is our performance evaluation system. We will have one by this fall that supervisors will be able to use electronically, an evaluation system for management and executive employees, and we're using the performance measures. So everything that you're seeing that's being talked about with budget, that's citywide, departments will also be using to evaluate their employees in that specific pay plan. So we're very excited about consolidating those, making them mean something from the governing body down to the department, down to the employees, so that there is buy-in on those performance measures and how that's important in reaching that. So I know it's a quick snapshot of human resources, so I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Are there questions? Councilman Clare.
No questions if I wasn't here. On the, and I'm sorry, Sasha, I had already turned the page. I was not talking about, this is your human resources education and travel.
I like your answer.
Turned the page. And it has risen $7,000.
Our training and education, we are trying to put a lot more emphasis on training with our employees. We do try to utilize a lot of free opportunities through EAP, whether it's stress management and all those. But as training, you have materials. It's a reallocation of some of the budget line items. When one reduced, we're trying to reallocate it and put more funds available for training. We're not saying we'll spend every dollar, but as resources for those training opportunities increase, whether there's books and materials, especially for that 16-week supervisory, those resources cost a little bit. We're looking at other opportunities, but right now that cost is significant when we're offering two classes for 20 employees for that 16-week.
And then what is this new expense that grants youth and social services?
That would be that program funding that's transferring from neighborhood services. The TWTW, that funding is just being transferred from neighborhood relations to human resources.
So TWTW,
Yes, ma'am.
the work?
Yeah.
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Seeing none. It is 8 o'clock. We usually take a break at this point. And our thinking was, we can see how far, if we go another hour or so, or what's your thoughts, and we can continue this on one of our budget programs if we wear out and it's no longer productive. But why don't we take a break, try to be back in 10 minutes, and we'll continue.
It's going well. A little bit like bingo, they have 3 different references. Yeah.
Yeah.